What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another weather forecast here by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And this is going to be an update here for the Eastern Pacific, as we're going to be looking at Tropical Depression E and whether it can become a tropical storm. And we're going to be forecasting its peak strength as well, just looking at overall conditions and why it can very well strengthen a lot more. But before we get into the video, be sure to smash that subscribe button, guys. I really appreciate all the support. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers before my birthday, which is July 28th. And as well, be sure to smash that bell icon. I really appreciate it. But yeah, we're having a webcam today. I've not done a webcam in over, I think, nearly a year. So might as well bring back the webcam. But let's go ahead and get into the forecast. So here's a look now at the Eastern Pacific forecast, here the 5-day forecast, and here we have Tropical Depression 2E right there, not too far off from the coast of Mexico. I say around 200, maybe 250 miles away from the coast there as well. We have another disturbance right there, just to the west of Tropical Depression 2E. So that has a 10% chance for the next 48 hours and as well for the next 5 days. But Tropical Depression here is at 35 miles an hour. Actually, let me go ahead and move my webcam a little bit that way. You guys can see it's sitting there at 35 miles an hour. And I believe its central pressure is 1,006 millibars. So it is still at that tropical depression type status there with the winds and with the millibar pressure, its lowest pressure. But as we go later into today, I do believe this can very well get very close to anywhere from 1,004 millibars to maybe even close to 1,003 millibars. So it's definitely gonna continue to strengthen and get more organized, and we are expecting a tropical storm within the next 18 hours. So we're expecting Blanca to form very soon from tropical depression 2E. I mean, it's going through very favorable conditions, which we'll be talking about throughout the whole video, and that's exactly why this can very well maybe become a tropical storm before the National Hurricane Center expects it to be. But again, 35 miles an hour, 1,006 millibars, and that's exactly what we have right now. So it's located at 12.4 degrees north and 107.7 degrees west. But this was the fourth advisory. We are expecting the fifth advisory within the next few hours. So we will see as it gradually goes throughout the day. But let's go ahead and get a look here at IR loop. So as you tell, this is a very organized tropical depression. I mean, it kind of gives me flashbacks to what Hurricane Hannah looked like. Hurricane Hannah was definitely not super organized, but this tropical depression looks like Hurricane Hannah, like what Hurricane Hannah looked like as a Category 2 hurricane. So here it is. As you do see, we have a ton of that convection right there. That is the area of where that low pressure is. Low pressure is going to be most likely anywhere from, we got a good color here, probably right here is where that low pressure is going to be here with that convection just in the north. But you do see the northern portion of this tropical depression does have the most amount of convection, and that could be because it's trying to find a new low pressure and close off to develop a fully closed eye wall, which will help it develop into a tropical storm. You do see we have some banding here. Actually, no, the blue's not going to work there. As you do see, we have some banding right here towards the west here as well. We're going to start seeing some banding possibly in the eastern portion by later today, but it does look like there is some shearing off here, because there is supposed to be some shear to the eastern portion of this storm here, and we can most likely see those effects here as it's kind of becoming more lopsided, kind of just western quadrants a lot more organized, and you can kind of see the eastern quadrants aren't super duper organized. It's kind of shearing off here, so a lot of convection is starting to die off in the eastern portion, and that not only could be because it's finding a new low pressure, but as well because of the shear, and I'll be showing the shear values later in the video so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But overall, it's a very good looking tropical storm here. I mean, consider this. This is a tropical storm, this is a tropical depression, sorry. This is a good looking tropical depression. It's not even a storm yet. So the fact that it looks like this as a depression, it's pretty surprising here. I mean, we typically see tropical depressions all over the place with convection, like all over the place. And we typically don't see purples pop up until it's a storm or hurricane. But this one as well is just overall having a ton of convection and great structure to it. If that shear does die off, which it's expected to die off by tomorrow, it's going to gain a lot more structure, and that's exactly where we'll be expecting our peak, possibly maybe 60 miles an hour. So that's definitely what we're looking at. This could very well get very close to a Category 1. It all depends. There was a hurricane trend last night, and it has gone down ever since. However, again, there's still very perfect, almost perfect conditions for the next 2 days, or actually next 24 or 36 hours. So this is definitely still has a chance to possibly become stronger than expected. But the way it looks right now, it's looking really good to become a named storm by tonight. So obviously, one thing that is the reason for this becoming such an organized storm and becoming a tropical storm very, very soon here is because of the SSTs we have here. You see very warm SSTs across much of the Eastern Pacific, specifically where the storm is right now. So I believe it's right here, and that is basically 29.5, almost 30 degrees Celsius waters, which is upper 80s. I believe 30 degrees is like maybe 87, 86. So we're talking high 80s for a long time because a new track has come out ever since it was expected to become weaker compared to yesterday. It was supposed to get up to maybe as high as 70 miles an hour, maybe 75 yesterday, but now it's kind of lowered. So because of that, the track has changed a little bit. Expected now to go kind of a little bit towards the east, northwest a little bit. So it's going to kind of northwest. It's exactly what's supposed to go. But right now it's going to kind of go north, and then it's going to go west, northwest. And that's exactly why this can very well continue to be stronger as we go to the next few days, or actually next day or so, because it's going to be going through warm waters a lot longer than if it were to continue to go northwest, which is exactly what it was supposed to do yesterday. Actually, a few tracks had it going basically up like that. And obviously, it will still have really warm waters, but if it goes like this, it has warmer waters for a lot longer time period. So we're talking anywhere from over 28.5 degrees Celsius to nearly 30 for the next 48 hours at least, which is going to be a big factor to this strengthening time or strengthening phase, and it can very well impact whether it gets closer to a hurricane or not. But let's go ahead and now look at the other forecasted models. Let's go ahead and look at the shear now. So here's a look at the shear for the next few hours. So as you do see, very little shear across this whole area. So not only do we have very, very warm waters, we have a ton of space where there's very, very little shear. I mean, we're talking less than maybe 24 knots. I mean, 24 knots sounds like a lot, but it's really organized. So as well, this one's very, very small. So it can find very small pockets of basically no shear. And we do have pockets around right here where there's less than 6 knots of shear. So overall, there's very, very little amount of shear here, especially in its future path, because right now it's around, I think, right here, right on the edge of that 24 knots to 0 knots, and it's expected to go towards the west-northwest. So very good conditions here for the next 24 to 36 hours. Let's go ahead and look at the time frame. Let's go the next 12 hours, and you're going to be seeing right here's where that storm's going to be. We're going to be seeing some shearing in the eastern portion, like I did mention. We're going to be seeing some shear in the eastern half. And exactly, let me go back to currently, like I did say, here is the reasoning why it's kind of lopsided, because there is shear on the eastern quadrants. And that's exactly why it looks a little bit lopsided. But as that shear kind of calms down a little bit, it's going to definitely gain a lot of structure and become a more tropical storm-like storm. And as we go later into the next, around almost 3 days from now, that shear's going to start really increasing. So overall, we have a good basically 48 hours until that shear really comes in and really tears the storm apart as the jet stream kind of drifts a little bit. That's subtropical jet. We have around 48 hours before that actually does happen, and it brings in a ton of shear to end this storm's career basically. So it does have a good 2 days to become as strong as possible before the effects come in. So it's going to be very interesting whether it does get close to a hurricane. I know models have decreased the trend. However, conditions are really good. Really warm waters, very little shear, a ton of moisture, which we'll be looking at later on, a ton of precipitated water. I mean, there's really nothing wrong, basically, with this storm and its conditions. So it may not get to a hurricane, but it may get stronger, maybe 65, 70 miles an hour. So that's exactly what to expect and wait to see here as the storm continues to strengthen today. So here's a look now at the NOAA forecast cone, and as you do see, we're looking at this to become a tropical storm until around Thursday. So what's today? Today's Monday. So basically, like I did say, between like that's 2 days is when it's gonna be at strongest. I mean, it has 2 days to get to its strongest, which is what? That's Wednesday. Yeah, that's Wednesday, and it's gonna not become a tropical depression until later on Thursday. So you do see by 6 in the morning, Thursday, early is when possibly the time frame of when we'll start seeing this tropical storm weaken into a tropical depression. So we basically have just under 3 days, around 60 hours, 67 or something like that hours here. So we're seeing less than 72 hours before this is supposed to become a tropical depression again. But like I did say, once you get past 48 hours, which is basically around this time period, we have told this for it to get to its strongest, because once we go after that, that's just going to become quite the factor. So, but here we have the cone going to go, like I did say, kind of going northwest a little bit here, and then it's going to go west northwest. When that's going to be a change of track because of its weakening trend compared to yesterday's model. So it's still going to be at least named for the next 60-ish hours or so, a little bit more than that. So we are still looking at this to be on our minds for a little bit. But as we do see some chalk depression, we get up to around the weekend time frame. So this will still be in the Atlantic, or not the Atlantic, into the Pacific before it becomes post-tropical for a good week or so. I mean, it's not going to completely die off and fall off the map. Let's now go ahead and look at the intensity guidance. So here's looking at the intensity guidance, and boy, have these changed compared to yesterday. I mean, we had models going all the way up here and going down, all the way up here, actually getting up to a category 1. So there has definitely been a pretty significant weakening trend, but as you do see, around 99%, or no, that's actually not true. Around 90% of the models have this becoming a tropical storm within the next 6 hours. So we're talking to the possibility for this to become a tropical storm before the 8 or 11 o'clock advisory. It really just depends here. So this definitely does have a chance to be named by tonight, which I am figuring, which I do figure is going to happen. It is sitting at 35 miles an hour right now, so it just needs 4 more to be 39, but obviously 5 to be 40, and they only put it at 40. So it basically needs 5 miles an hour left a week to strengthen. So it's almost there. It's really almost there. But the peak models have it is going to run 55 knots, which is basically just under 63 miles an hour. So that's still pretty strong, I guess. But like I did say, if this were to maybe organize a lot more and that shear does minimize more than normal or expected, this could very well become maybe a 70 mile an hour tropical storm. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's always a possibility that this strengthened a little bit more than expected. But there you see, then they have it weakening to a tropical storm either in the next 48 hours, maybe because of that shear, or with the next 84 hours. So we kind of have with the next 2 to 3 day time period that this does weaken back to a tropical depression, and then it gradually weakens after that. But let's now go ahead and look at the models European to see the tropical depression and tropical storm wind probabilities. So here's looking now at the European tropical depression wind probability here. So in the next 0 to 3 days, we do of course have a 90 to 100% chance for tropical depression winds across this whole area, and that's obviously because it's already a tropical depression, so it can't possibly be 0% or lower than 100%. So this is the next 23 days. So at least within the next 3 days, we will be seeing tropical depression winds. Obviously, this is where it's going to be right now, and then later in the next 3 days, it'll be up there. So we're expecting tropical depression winds at 90 to 100% for the next 3 days at least. And then the next 1 to 4 days, obviously, as it goes a little bit to the west, we still have a 90 to 100% chance, but it will be decreasing. And then once we get to the next 2 to 5 days, we still have a 90 to 100% chance for tropical depression winds right there. I mean, it's going to be gradually decreasing, but once it gets the next 3 to 6 days, it goes to a 50 to 60% chance. So basically, we have around 3 to 5 days before these tropical depression winds, before it becomes post-tropical, basically, which is exactly what I said. What's today? Basically around the weekend time from Friday to Saturday. So the tropical storm wind probabilities here, and for some reason the European does not have this becoming a tropical storm, as you do see. European does not want to have this as a tropical storm. You do see they have a 0%, 0 to 10% for this to become a tropical storm, which is actually completely weird because it had it yesterday. And of course, there's a very low chance for hurricane wind probabilities. But European has actually been showing this struggling to become a storm, and they actually had that last night. The GFS, however, on the other hand, does have this becoming a tropical storm, and it has it around 60 to 65 miles an hour. So there are some pretty big differences between the European and GFS. Typically, European does tend to be the most accurate when it comes to tropics, but it seems like as if the GFS is going to be correct on this because it's already at 35 miles an hour, and it's going to be named within the next 6 hours. So once the storm becomes named, the European's automatically wrong here. But let's not go ahead and look at the tracks. So again, it's not going to impact any land, not even these islands over there. I'm not even sure if those islands I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure they're part of Mexico, but I'm not sure about the names of the islands. But it's going to avoid land at all costs. So it's going to go kind of northwest now, and then west northwest as it does go on a weakening trend here, allowing it to go more towards the west here. And like I said, it's not going to impact land. So let's go ahead and skip to the next track. Let's go ahead and check look now at the GFS 10-meter wind speed here. So as you do see, the next 3 hours, you have a very, very, very small dot right there. And that's exactly where the storm is going to be. We already have around 30 to 32 knots here. Obviously, European National Hurricane Center just have this at around 35 miles an hour. So this is exactly what we're going to be keeping a close eye on as it does get towards the strengthening time frame. But let's not go later on here into the next 12 hours or so. They do have it becoming a tropical storm and getting this up to around 40 knots. So this is a knots. Yeah, this is knots. So it'll basically be around 45 miles an hour with the next 12 hours, according to the GFS. As when I go later on into the next 21 hours, so early tomorrow morning here, especially for obviously this time period, for this time zone, it's gonna be really early in the morning here. We are expecting here this to get to around 45 to possibly nearly 48 knots, which is basically around 55 miles an hour. So GFS already has this around 20 miles an hour stronger compared to now, to the next 24 or almost 21 hours. And then the next 27 hours, the GFS is getting this up to around 50 to 52 knots. So getting it just around, just under 60 miles an hour. And then, of course, continues to strengthen here by once we get to Tuesday. Like I did say, Tuesday is going to be the day that it gets to its strongest, but it still has with the next 48 hours to get to its strongest before that shear comes in into the Thursday time frame. You can kind of see Thursday and Friday it completely falls apart because of that shear. But we're talking this to become at its strongest possibly by tomorrow early afternoon for Eastern time, getting nearly maybe 60 to 65 miles an hour. Let's now go ahead and look at the HMON and HWRF models, which are detailed hurricane models, and see exactly what they say about the storm. So here's looking at the HMON here, 10-meter wind speed here in miles an hour. So, and right now, currently, they do have this at around 30 knots here, which is going to be translated to 35 miles an hour. And they do see, like I did say, it's very, very lopsided. You kind of have somewhat a developing eye wall there, and that will be a sign possibly of this strengthening. But we got to keep in, we have to keep in consider that the European, or not the European, the HMON and HWRF love to overreact storms. I mean, they love doing it for a living. So we still cannot take this 100%. But they do have it within the next 3 hours. Like I did say, they like overreacting. With the next 3 hours, they have this already up to around 60 miles an hour, which we all know will not happen. And as we go later on into the next 9 and 12 hours, they have it up to around, let's see here, that's basically around 62 miles an hour. So they already have this up to a 60 mile an hour storm by the next 12 hours, which we all know would not happen. Actually, they get it up to nearly a week, almost a week hurricane, but they have it around 66 to 70 miles an hour. So, and they actually have it up to a category 2. So the HMON is heading this up to category 2, which we all know will not happen. Let's go ahead and look here at the precipitation here. And there you see, overall, it's going to be a pretty big storm here, bringing a ton of rain. Thankfully, it will not be impacting any land. And let's go ahead and look at the HWRF here on 10-meter wind speed miles an hour. As they do see, they're a little bit more reasonable compared to the HMON, but they have it up to around 30, maybe 36 knots for the next 3 hours. So they do have it around just under 40 miles an hour for the next 3 hours. As we go later on, the next 21 hours, they do have this up to matching. They actually have this matching up with the GFS, getting it around just around 48, 49 knots within the next 21 hours. So around 55 miles an hour. So 20 miles an hour stronger compared to now. So actually, HWRF and GFS tend to be at, they seem to be a little bit on a agreeing. However, the European and the European and GFS just don't want to agree whatsoever, and the HWRF's doing, or no, the HMON's doing HMON things. They can just, I don't know what they're doing. But let's go ahead and look at what the European has to say. And last but not least, let's go ahead and look at the European 10-meter winds here and knots. And as you do see, in the next 6 hours, they don't really have the storm anywhere whatsoever. Obviously, it's just a little dot right there, but they don't have it more than 24 knots, which obviously it's already over 24 knots. And this is the next 6 hours. I mean, look at this. This is just, they don't have anything whatsoever. Maybe 30 knots within the next 14 hours, which is pretty stronger than that. It's already stronger than that. I mean, the European literally shows nothing whatsoever, not even tomorrow in the early afternoon, which is exactly where it's supposed to be at strongest. So European, I'm not sure what you're doing. Maybe you need a little bit of a warm up. I know it's early. It's May. You guys need a warm up to get your brain cells going, but I'm not sure what the European's doing right now. I think they need a little bit of a warm up to become the best model, because obviously they're known to be the best tropical model. So let's see if they can actually live by that. But they're definitely not living by that right now. GFS, for once, you guys, I actually agree with you guys. For those who are OG viewers, you guys know I bashed the GFS so much last season. And I also bashed the National Hurricane Center so much last season. But we all had reasoning to do that. But European, or GFS, for once, you guys are useful, I guess. But hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.